Hello to everybody, and hope you all are well and healthy and happy. And I don't know what to add now. So yes, I'm well, and you can hear the crows. Today there's some problems because they're constantly fighting. I don't know why from this morning. Anyway, so I'm well, and as you have heard or read from the news, the virus is still going up in India, and particularly the state where I am, Karnataka state. But the situation at the monastery and surrounding Tibetan community uh, seems same. Hasn't changed the situation here. And the last few days, I've been working with other my colleague abbots to prepare for the Gelug's annual exam, because so this year, due to the coronavirus, we need to do very differently, and people don't want different; they want same thing, and lots of resentment, lots of gossips, lots of things, but more or less the 6 abbots, we have, done the most of the preparation, but still we have to do a few things. And it will start on 20th of August. So, quite soon, about 20 days, 21 days. But preparations from our side is more or less is done. And whether they like it or not, many of them want, please give us holiday this year. And these days there are many ways to do that, because social media is not just outside the world, it is also in the monastery. So anyway, I don't have Facebook, Twitter, all those social media accounts, and that's really good. And also because Indian government, banned many of the Chinese, what you call those apps, including WeChat, less opportunity. Now they have more, they need to use those WhatsApp and those things. And anyway, that is my current situation. So shall we start our series, thinking? Okay. So last week our reading was mainly a verse, the 18 and 19. Those two verses are out of the 6 perfections, the second and third perfections, perfection of ethics and perfection of patience. And also we started briefly to explain a little bit from the verse 16 and 17, which is explaining the perfection of generosity. And also we have touched on, briefly started the reading verse 19, which is the perfection of patience. And I think we done the what you call the explanation of the meaning of the verse lines. I think we have already done, but we haven't managed to finish that, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do that is again briefly, reading or looking at this Tsongkhapa's text on the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment in the second volume, the volume which mainly focus on cultivation of bodhicitta, and the first out of the 6 perfections, first 4 perfections, and this is what we and in that, our today's reading, briefly to explain, is on page 159, where the Tsongkhapa explains the perfection of patience. Particularly, the perfection of patience can be developed. Patience can be developed from many different angles. Many different angles. It is not just simply accepting the pain or difficulties or harassment or whatever is caused upon us. It needs more more thinking, more analysis, more the broader understandings, and that is done to explain, saying the giving the 3 divisions or 3 kinds of 3 types of perfection of patience is explained. And before we do that, and one thing which we all should remember, it is in the same chapter as chapter 6 by the Shantideva's Guide to the Way of Life. In that chapter 6, which is the patient chapter, which he very nicely summarized, how the patient's perfection of patience is cultivated. So, and in Tibetan it says this: "Sading teta koyo tu tingi koyo kalatang, hamdi samji koyo ni sading tamje yokata." This is in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, 6th chapter. So he gave a very dramatic or very nice, the illustration or analogies, saying in order to protect your feet, from the thorns or from any sort of the pebble, whatever. When you walk, it is impossible. It is impossible to cover the places where you walk, where you walk or where you go, to save or to protect your feet. But it is the same protection will achieve or will get if you have a good pair of shoes. And that is the analogy, that's the illustration. And what he's saying is, it is impossible to try to sort it out. All the outside, those causes and conditions make us to get angry, to lose our temper. It is impossible, in terms of the people, in terms of the situation, in terms of the conditions. That is impossible. We may, make 1 or 2 people or 3, 10 people, not get upset or not cause us pain and difficulty, but it is impossible. It is impossible to cover entire world that you're going to walk, with a letter, it is impossible. And that's what analogy. And this is really important for us. What it's saying is, if we train our mind in this case, not to lose our temper, not to get upset, not experience anger, hatred, and those unhealthy mental states, it is better and it is perfectly possible to work our minds. Then we'll have the same kind of protection, not to lose our temper, not to lose, not get angry, So that's what here Shantideva's text, which is very important. Just give you a brief summary, and I'm sure many of you know that Shantideva, as I may have mentioned in last week, Shantideva's entire this Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life text is really amazing, as His Holiness says very, very often. In order to train our mind and to have patience, to have altruistic mind, among the many great Indian masters' texts, the Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life is the most, what you call the helpful, useful, profound text. So it is useful to bear in mind. So then, now on page 159, when the traditionally saying there are three types of the patients. Here, the title is used three divisions of patients. For me, three types of patient is explained in that way. Just simply, cultivation of patience, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it is not just one particular technique or one particular method or one particular solution. It has many different, from the many different angles, from the many different ways, then to make our minds to have that quality of not lose our temper very quickly. So those are something which is important. I will not go all detail but here, particularly on this perfection, the Tsongkhapa gave quite a good explanation from page 152 to all the way to the 179. Quite big. And most of his, the explanation and the quotations are coming from that chapter 6 by Shantideva. So he sort of extract most of the relevant. Of course, all the verses are relevant, but particularly more practical right here and now, which are useful to us to put into practice. This is very useful because, for example, today's, just briefly to explain to you, out of those three divisions, the first one, developing the patience of disregarding harm done to you, in Tibetan. So under that, then again, Tsongkhapa gave different, in other words, dissected and gave more detail bit by bit, which is but mainly here really saying, that we need to examine, we need to analyze, for example, where the harms are coming from, how the harms are created, what are the conditions, in terms of the person, in terms of his or her mental state, and all those things need to be examined, need to be analyzed. Then we will have better understanding of the entire, situation. Then there's a less possibility to get upset, when we face challenges and difficulties. For example, currently we are experiencing this, a virus, and as we had a discussion, some of our previous readings, it is a virus. It is not a sentient. It is not some sort of, deliberately he or she consciously, willingly want to cause the human beings on this planet to panic and to lose life and all those things. And they not only lost many lives, but also, lots of what you call the difficulties, sufferings are caused. But again, if we look at then, when we look at all those, for example, some countries going through very hardship, then lots of, blaming to each other, to the blaming to the, the authorities, blaming to this and that. So, of course, there are, the mistakes. I'm sure there are mistakes are made and so on and so forth. But then again, when we need to look at all those pieces, then, although the fear, concern, sadness, losing loved ones will be there, but there won't be deep, deep, deep down when we get all the things in a more detailed understanding, fuller understanding, then there won't be resentment deep down towards the virus, towards the authorities, toward the situation, and including ourselves as a person. So that is really something useful to look at. And if you look at those, for example, in the page 160, Tsongkhapa again, that particular patience, how to cultivate, is also divided, explained into different. Here it says on analysis of the object, anger is unjustified. On analysis of the subject, anger is unjustified. On analysis of the basis, anger is unjustified. All these analyses, the object, as I mentioned the other week, when somebody throws something, or beat somebody, if you look at the actual pain is caused by that object, what? But then the object is then going back to the human person, then going back to his or her mental state. All those analysis is important, and if you look at. So I will not go any detail, but many of you, I'm sure, got this book, Tsongkhapa's this book. Look at that there, and seek some detailed, more long-term solution. Of course, the seeking therapies are very, very useful, very, very important. But it is also the same time for us to have a long-term solution, the long-term solution, which is useful. Okay, so that is part of the patience, which the text which we that we already read. Now, then the next verse, that is the verse 20, and it is out of the sixth perfection. It is the fourth one, which is joyous effort, quite often translated. And in the translation of that prayer, the prayer that we are reading, patience. So I will read, that is the verse 20, that starts from saying, it is by effort that I must practice the perfection of effort without enjoying laziness. By the power of mind and body, I wish to accomplish the perfection of effort. That is in the English translation. So in Tibetan, Zunru Zambe Zunru Ki and Den To Lelo Ma Chi Xing Top Dang Dembe Lu Sim Ki Zunru Paro Chin Zok Sho. So that is the verse 20 in Tibetan. So Zunru is in Tibetan, the joyous effort. What Zunru? I don't know. Joyous effort. It has a the quality of strength, mental strength. It has a quality of mental determination. That sort of saying, when once we see the the benefits, the usefulness of having certain mental states like love, compassion, altruism, or other mental qualities. Once we see their qualities, or once we understand, necessity of these certain mental qualities, then, setting our mind, no matter how long it takes, I will continue. That kind of stillness, that kind of still, or that kind of determination. And then Zundu has the joyous effort has that kind of quality. But it should have, with that determination, also should have strong element of joy. Joy in the sense what you are doing. What you are doing. And one of my common examples, many of you have heard this, like in the West, you have lots of very dangerous, very expensive, what you call the hobby, hobbies, and some are very, very painful and very dangerous, like rock climbing, like bungee jumping, and people who put wings and then fly thousands of feet and risking their life. But they have a tremendous sense of, I don't know, sense of what in English you call thrill, or that. But I'm sure they also have a deep, some kind of joy, even though hardship what they were doing, so it should have that kind of. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but have, even though it's hard, even though it's tough, to practice patience, to practice ethics, to practice generosity, and other mental qualities, love, compassion, practicing, the patience is not easy at all. It's not easy at all. It is not in the matter of, you are isolating from the other things, things that cause you anger. It is perfectly possible. You are completely isolated from the human beings, but still you constantly lose your temper. You get anger, get angry. So what I'm talking about is the joy should be there, and to have that, then the determination and joy will come when we understand the benefits of having those mental qualities, having those positive behaviors, actions, with them, those mental qualities. And that is here joyous effort, which is Zundu. So now look at those 4 lines. Zundu, that is joyous effort. Zambe means put effort. Zamba literally it means do or put into practice. That is Zundu Zamba. Zundu Zambe, Zundu Ji. Then Do. So when you put effort, then the effort will grow with the sense of joy. Then Do, the third, the second line, Paurada. Then Do means stable or long term. Do is joy, long term joy, joyous effort. will grow. Zundu zambe, zundu ki, then do, lelo, lelo, ma chi xing, lelo, talking about, lelo is what you call the laziness, lelo. And, there are several different, as the laziness. And one of the most, particularly for the Westerners, which want to keep very, very active, general or majority of them. Of course, there are people, couch potato, but the majority are very active. So even though physically, mentally, being in a very active mode, but from the spiritual point of view, it might be, it may belongs to that category of the laziness, and the chawa nishinji lelo, and that is what I'm talking about here. Chawa nishinji lelo, saying you spend your time, energy, and resources simply for those not very much meaning, and not that very much long-term meaning to oneself and to others, those activities, those affairs, and even though you live your life, I'll use a Tibetan analogy. In Tibetan, we say, today I'm very busy. Even if my hair caught fire, I don't have time to extinguish that fire. And I'm sure you may have similar expression in English. So, even if somebody lives his or her life in that fashion, but what kind of affair, what kind of activity that he or she is engaged in, keeping himself, herself in that very busy. If those affairs or activities are just simply, what you call purely to have sensory pleasure for today, tomorrow, next few days, then not that much meaning. Of course, we need pleasure, we need happiness, joys, but at least to have something long term. To even if to just think about ourselves, have something long term, a few decades, like that sort of. Then even there's some kind of meaning. And particularly people who really sincerely admire, or the Bodhisattva and the path, then they need to think wider, not just one's own long-term activities, events, affairs that we are keeping ourselves very busy. Those events or activities should have positive impact to wider community, wider, the living beings. And that is, out of the different kinds of laziness. And the other one, I suffer a lot. That is that postponing, procrastinating. That is my many weaknesses. That's one of my strongest weaknesses. I want to push back tomorrow, until deadline comes. Even deadline is, next hour. Maybe I will do in 10 minutes. So that's really important. And but normally, generally speaking, what I've noticed, Westerners have less that kind of procrastination, the type of laziness. And I'm talking about worldly events. In spiritual, I don't know. So that is the tendo lelo machishin, to avoid, to abandon those, the laziness. Chawan shinji lelo, gilu lelo, dangile, or the other one, dangile nyebe lelo. That saying, saying, oh, I can't do. I'm too old. My hairs are very gray, and my sides are going. So I'm too old. So I can't do. Not in that. That's also counted as a, the type of laziness. And but also that is, generally speaking, I think that in the West maybe less. As I mentioned, and in terms of the age ways, they want to learn third or fourth language, even he or she is in age 80s. So that's something good example I have learned in my early time in London. But there are people, particularly I think it seems in the younger generation, what that term is used, low self-esteem. And that is part of, this third type of laziness. When we have low self-esteem, then we feel that sense of inferior, sense of I can't do, or and that is also counted as a laziness. And from the Buddhist point of view, and particularly Bodhisattva and the teachings point of view, regardless of different life upbringing, living in a different continent, having different skin colors, having different family backgrounds, we all are human beings. We all have the potential to really, to experience love, compassion, altruism, all those amazing mental qualities, And these are now, particularly when, these days, quite often, the people who work in those hospitals, who work in those old people's house, when the news collector, when they interview those nurses, those doctors, those caretaker, people, carers, and that really clearly indicates, that we human have these amazing, qualities. Many of them, the other day I watched one short interview, and there was a lady, and that's in America. She said that she, hasn't seen, or met her families almost 3 months, just because of she really wants to look after the patients coming to hospitals like that. And there are many, and these are something which also we should, this kind of time, this kind of situation, we should, not to take all the sad, all the depressing news, that upload in our brain by this, the social media, whatever. Also, we should look at some of those very admiring people. These are very simple, ordinary people, just nurses, carers, and so therefore not to put ourselves down, have whatever situation, to have saying, yes, I'm a human being. I had those. Okay. So then, what I'm looking at is this. So now, we have this brief explanation on the opposite or the obstacle to enhance our joyous effort, which is laziness. Then the third one, Topdang Denbe Lusimki. Topdang Denba, Top, strength. Denba having strength, possessing strength. Topdang Denbe. And that strength, having the strength of the joyous effort. Then our body, speech, and mind. With our body, speech, and mind, may the perfection of joyous effort be perfected, or and that is what here in these 4 lines. And again, it is explained in the Tsongkhapa's this book, page 180. It is started from page 182, and then it goes all the way to down. But I'm just want to draw your attention. Page 184. Once again, divisions, 3 divisions. It says armor like joys, perseverance. So here they translated joyous perseverance. So far we are using joyous effort. And the second one is joyous perseverance of gathering virtue, and joyous perseverance of acting for the welfare of living beings. And this is explained with the context to the cultivation of bodhicitta. The first one is called the armor-like joyous effort. Armor-like joyous effort in the sense when we put effort to cultivate love, to cultivate compassion, to cultivate the patience, and what's called obstacles. Obstacles occur externally or internally. When obstacles occur, we should have strength, mental strength. Armor, as you know, kocha in Tibetan, kocha. Kocha in here translated armor. When the ancient time, when they have this, or these armors are able to observe and absorb or whatever those errors or whatever they throw upon you. And it is like talking about that. When the obstacles are occurring internally or externally, to have the strength to not to lose your determination, not to lose your the mental strength. And these are, again, as I mentioned earlier, really through the contemplating, analyzing long-term benefits, long-term usefulness, and that yes, short-term, tough, difficult, the painful, and all those things, but the cultivation of this mental state will long-term, it will benefit to myself, and it will benefit others. Thinking about that, then it is like having the armor. And the second and third, joyous effort, joyous perseverance of gathering virtues. Again, saying when we, whatever the reason, I don't know. Maybe what you call the scientists can analyze. It seems for us to do something, unhelpful or non-virtuous. It is quite easy to do. But when we need to do some virtuous things, it is always tough. Always tough. And I don't know. And maybe the Buddhist answer might be saying, "Oh, we have done this for a long, long, long time in many lifetimes." That's might be the one of the Buddhist answers. But it might be good to have a good Western scientist to do a research why it is so easy to do those, break laws, but why it is so difficult not to keep, and it was so easy to, why it's not so easy to practice the, what you call the ethics and so forth. Anyway, that is something. And the third one is welfare for living beings. So this is these three, the joys, perseverance, I explain particularly relation to the cultivation of bodhicitta, cultivation of bodhicitta. So that is joy's effort. We already read. Okay. So I will leave it here. I will leave it here today. And it is a little bit, but it's okay. And I will leave it here. And so we will do a 21 Tara recitation. Bodalhai Nejong Tami Chambo Raba Medi Ula De Tuzum Sanje Chenem Doma Koje Shezo Latang Pami Chep Shagi Pemo La De Pongba Kone Twenzem Doma Yumla Chance Omo Je Zema Pama Doma La Chance Chance Doma Nyuma Pamo Jene Keje La Danja Jide Zungun Chegi Shegi Kesa Jiwan Chance Dongge Dawa Kawa Jene Zigbe Shem Kama Dongda Soba Namandi Rato Chewe Chance Sengwe Chune Keje Peme Chane Peme Chane Nambara Jen Ma Jimba Zundu Padu Shi Soba Samdin Chuni Chance Tijin Shewe 타에 넘버를 겨워 저마 말을 바로 정도 개회 세계 신도 때마 천재 도다라 르다 초다 남가 가마 지게 동보샤 르바 메바 고바네 마 천재 계진 나자 농라 나조 원주 저마 정보라 제사 니진 소디 되네 때마 천재 대제 자당페 바로 주고 라도 좀마 예공연장 샤데네 매바라 주관 신도 바라마 장제 둘이 제과체 되게 바오 넘버를 좀 취기 전에 전에데 더 탐제 말을 마 장제 군조 순대자 세메 토가 넘버를 게마 말을 초기 고로게 당제의 손음을 마 장제라도 가와지 오진의 정화 배마 시과를 제도다라 드단직된 온도제마 장제 사시 중에서 탐제 고반의 마니마 천년 예와이 공바 탐제 나버를 마 장제 장제 다외 동보 겸바 탐제 신도 바마 레베 전에 바 다버리 신도 여러분제 마 장제 개베 바레 쳔웨네 마 예자용 보모군 다에 봉네 나버리 좀마 장제 사시용 차 되게 늦은 잡게 동마 천년 전제 이게 홍 레바도 뭐 남네게 마 장제 대마 개마시 양내 대신 주님마 소와온다 양다데 디바 첨보 좀바니마 장제 군에 고로가 다에르네 나버게마 이게 주변만에 그 레바 홍래 좀마니마 장제 도레 샤네다 홍게 나베 사베니마 레라멘다라 담베 지겐 숨나예와니마 장자파에 소에나데 레다 따진 차나나마 따라니 주페게 드나마르 파네세마 장제 드나 장자파에 손게 Hadamim je dema, Gune goja kawa je, Zedam neba sema, Chaze nima kawa je, Chini pola rao sema, Hara ni ju tuda rai, Shindo tabwe rine sema, Chaze tini sumambe, Shive tuda yanda dema, Duda roma ni jinso, Jomba dure rakcho nima, Zale nga di deba dita, Chanze wane nishu saje. Chanjo semjo rembo je maje pan maje yoje. Jeba nyamba meba yang kongne kongdu teba shu. Kare rave korve shengam deso pendang dewa ma. Chere sewa tenzi jazo yi shabe side pado tenjuro che. Oh yeah, thank you. There is I think there's one question in the, I remember, I thought it might be good to answer that question. That was in the last week's, I think they were, practice. Sometimes. Oh yeah, that is, I think the person is Brian. He says this. Bodhisattva. In practice, sometimes I trip myself up by not applying or forgetting to apply appropriately. Sometimes I have heard His Holiness referring to actor and action, and keeping compassion for the actor by applying countermeasures to the actor. Does Geshe-la have any? Yeah, that is something which is important one. Particularly when we are practicing, I thought to say that patience, which I was talking about earlier briefly. Should not lose our compassion, to the people or to the person who acts badly or cause pain, but at the same time to confront if his or her action is wrong in the sense harming pain and causing difficulty, then confront in the sense not to be doormat, not become doormat, but confront his or her those actions. I think that is the one part, and that is quite often explained in the Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, chapter 6, which I was talking about earlier, in relation to the patience. The harm, try to understand the action of the harm and the actor who caused that action. So that is, I think, that His Holiness is talking about. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, and see you in next week. Keep well, be happy. Don't go to pub too much. Okay, thank you.